Hello, a very good evening and welcome to Love Talk. It's a pleasure to be here with you again. And next to me, as usual, it's my wife.
Hi, everyone.
I want you to have a look at your screen. Can you see that picture? That picture has a lot to do with your love life. You'd be surprised. Maybe say, Bishop, how does that picture have to do with my love life? We'll show you in just a few moments. Enjoy this song. We'll be back in a second.
The service is nearing an end. The choir is singing just as I am. And now, as that old song is playing, people at the altar are kneeling down to pray. Some are finding mercy, forgiveness for their sins. Some are fighting battles they've been struggling to win. The time has come to give them to the Lord. That's what this altar is for. That's what this altar is for. You don't have to carry those burdens anymore. There's a light in the darkness. There's a love that's true. And Jesus is waiting. He's waiting here for you. Go quickly now before they close the door. That's what this altar is for. I see a father praying with his son. Mother kneels beside them, thanking God they'd come. There's an old man standing there in tears, giving up a part of him he's held back for years. Hearts are being broken, lives are being changed. Those who call upon him, they will never be the same. The time has come to give in to the Lord. That's what this altar is for. This altar is for. You don't have to carry those burdens anymore. There's a light in the darkness, and there's a love that's true. And Jesus is waiting. He's waiting here for you. Go quickly now before they close the door. You can give your burdens to the Lord. That's what this altar is for.
But you will soon cross the Jordan River and live in the land the Lord your God is giving you. when he gives you rest from all your enemies and you're living safely in the land, you must bring everything I command you: your burnt offerings, your sacrifices, your tithes, your sacred offerings, and your offerings to fulfill a vow, to the designated place of worship, the place the Lord your God chooses for his name to be honored. You must celebrate there in the presence of the Lord your God, with your sons and daughters and all your servants. And remember to include the Levites who live in your towns, for they will receive no allotment of land among you. Deuteronomy chapter 12, from verse 10 to 12. We are preparing for the greatest feast of first fruits, which will start on April 7th in your local UCKG Help Center or Succeed in Life Center. Moses passed on to the Israelites what God had revealed to him, the key to a good life in the Promised Land: faithfulness. Rest, safety, and the many other blessings that we enjoy are reason enough for us to worship the Lord our God at the place he has chosen to be worshipped, the holy altar. Prepare yourselves, bring your faithfulness, and worship God starting on April 7 in the morning services. Don't miss it.
Welcome back. Here's that picture again. And I think, Elena, this is how many people feel their love lives are, their marriage is. It's a mess. Mm-hmm. They don't know where to start.
Mm-hmm. They don't even know how it all began. How did my love life become so messy?
How did I get here?
Yeah, how did I get here? Why? When? Who? I can only imagine. It's like, you know, some people want to live a very wild life and do what many people like to say, which is life is short, right? So let's have fun and make the most of life. But then this is the result.
And I also think, Elena, there are people who they don't want to live a fast life, a wild life. I think there are people who unfortunately found themselves in this situation. So the question is, how do you fix that? Well, we're going to talk to you today, no matter what your situation is, how you fix your relationship, your love life. Even if there is no relationship, how do you fix your love life if it feels or looks like that? When you have a tangled up piece of string, the first thing you need to look at, it's the end. There are two ends to that piece of string. You look for one end. And in love life, the first thing you need to look at is yourself. Because the truth is, there's no such thing as marriage problems. What exists are marriages with people who have internal problems. The problem is usually internal, inside the person. Things that have never been addressed, dealt with, traumas, anxieties, things that the person has had within them for a long time. And when you're alone, these things don't really manifest. But the moment that you go and live under the same roof with someone, that becomes a problem.
Yes, you know, when people look at the entanglement, how do you say in English?
The tangling.
The tangling, you know, their life is like, wow, it's so messy. The tendency is to say, oh, it's because of that person. Oh, it's because I married the wrong person. Oh, it's because the cousin of the cousin who was married to my husband, the previous one, this is a very good point. The problem is not the person.
Because if you, sorry to cut in on you, Elena, it's just something I think is important with what you said, because if a person has all these issues, you think, sometimes the person thinks they're ugly, they're not worth anything, you have these thoughts, and you live by yourself, you have no one to externalize what you feel. But when you move in with someone, you live with someone, you have a relationship, these things start to come out because you want the person to take this away from you, and they can't because this is something internal.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I mean, you know, I usually tell younger girls who are about to marry, I always tell them, you know, when they come for advice, I say, listen, you've learned so much about marriage, you've read books, you've been to seminars, but you will only truly know who you are when you are in a relationship with someone, because the uglies and also the good things will come out and will show who you really are. So sometimes it happened to me at the beginning of our marriage. I used to think, oh, why has my husband changed? He's not so loving anymore, because now we were living together, we were married, there were things that needed to be done, routine. I used to have certain behaviors that I would blame you. But deep down, it was me. I was the insecure person. So there's a lot of things that come out when you are in a relationship that if you don't stop to look at the situation, you will never see that the problem is with you, in you, like you said, an unresolved problem.
Yeah. So when you truly want to fix a relationship, it's like we always say here, you have no power over the other person, and you can't change that person. So there's no point for you to feel angry and upset because the person did something or said something, because you can't change them. But the first part that needs to be fixed in a relationship is with you. That's right. You need to look at yourself and see where you need to change, so that then the transformation after it happens with you, it goes on to that other person. Something very interesting that Jesus did is that he always showed people that the problem was inside of them. There is no greater example of this than the Samaritan woman that Jesus met at the well. That Samaritan woman is like many people today. She was married, I think 4 times, 5 times. Jesus didn't say to her, listen, your problem is that you only found bad men.
They are all the same.
Yeah, Jesus didn't say to the Samaritan woman, listen, all men are the same. Jesus said, you know what your problem is? You're thirsty. You're thirsty for a water that only I can give you. The moment I give you this water, you will never be thirsty again. So sometimes relationships break down. Sometimes they never start because there are so many issues unresolved with the person that there's no chance of making a relationship work. It's like if I have a car that is old and broken, doesn't work, but I want to sell the car. I want you to buy the car at a high price, but the car doesn't work. Why would she buy a car that is old, doesn't work? Why would she spend money on it? Doesn't make sense. But yet I want to force her to do it. It's like many people in relationships. They have internal problems, but they want to force the person to accept them the way they are.
And this is very, I hope that people at home are really, really watching this, paying attention, okay? Maybe you need to watch this video 2 or 3 times, because this might be the solution to your particular problem. Because I remember in our marriage, beginning of our marriage, 18 years ago, I didn't know these things. And here we are teaching you what we've learned. It could have saved us so much pain.
Trouble.
So much trouble at the beginning of our marriage. This is very simple. You have to really look at yourself. For example, the example you gave of the Samaritan woman is it's excellent. She was thirsty. Maybe people are watching us and asking, well, thirsty of what? Water, wine, juice, tea? No. Her thirst was like many people. They cannot stay alone. They always have to be in a relationship. They always have to fill the gap. And most of the times when you are always looking for something because you can't stay with yourself, because you have inner issues, you don't have peace, or you are insecure, you always have to be in a relationship, you end up making mistakes.
And the problem is that every relationship that ends and the new one that begins, you carry more problems inside of you. Every relationship that you had and you move on to the next, you accumulate more and more problems. So maybe your question is, Bishop, how do I solve this problem? How do I solve this issue you just mentioned? Well, there's only one way. You have to go to the one who created you, who made you, who knows you inside and out, who knows your issues, your traumas. And you have to know what they are. Make a list. Maybe you know you are a selfish person. You don't like to share. You don't like to give in to someone else's request, if you're a selfish person, then I guarantee you that your relationships will fail. How can a relationship work if you are a selfish person? Make a list. Maybe you find out that you are a very argumentative person. You like to argue. You like to make sure your point always wins. Then I'm sorry, you can't be in a marriage, because in a marriage, your point is not always going to win. Sometimes the other person's right. So you need to see what these things are. You need to do an X-ray of yourself. I can't help you with that. We can't help you. Make an X-ray of the things that perhaps are affecting your relationship right now, or the things that are stopping you to have a relationship. And then go to God, ask God to change these things. Perhaps right now, the campaign we are having in the church of Sennacherib, of dealing with the mocking of your enemies, is the perfect time for you to deal with this. Go to God and say, Lord, I don't accept to be like this anymore. I don't accept to be the reason why my marriage, my relationship is failing. Because I have news for you. Perhaps until today you've always blamed someone for the failures in your relationship. But it might just be that the problem may be with you. And if it is, I have great news. You have all the tools to fix it. Let's watch a testimony. We'll come back to finalize the program.
I was brought up in Nigeria. We had a good life. I went to private school because my father was a chartered accountant. He worked for big bank, Citibank. Then we came here. Myself, one of my sisters, my mom, my other one was born here. Then after a while, I realized my father is not coming back because he used to travel for his work. After about 6-7 months, he disappeared. And that was when I was about 11, 12, and then not too long after that, the abuse started. I was abused by someone in the family. The abuse is horrific. Had my skin torn with razor blade, made to strip absolutely naked for like hours on end, hours, with the hottest of chilies rubbed in every orifice of my body. I started sleepwalking up to the point that I would wake up at the point of just about to stab my mom. Because of that, I left. Disowned, never wanted to know who they were, how they were. I was brought up as a Catholic, but because of that, I became an atheist for like 20 years. I developed deep grudge, deep hatred, like ultimate revenge queen. I was the revenge queen. I'd plan every day how I'd go back, set the house on fire with my mother and my 2 sisters in there, especially because nothing happened to them. So I believe that, well, they were loved more. Every waking day was just grudge, and because of that, I started smoking. I used to have weed parties every month. Because of the good crowd that I was in, I had good jobs. In my early 20s, I was like 34,000 working as a private secretary for a judge. Everything looked so nice on the outside, but on the inside, I was rotten. I was deeply hurt. I was in pain. I never trusted anyone, and I developed bulimia and split personality, which was diagnosed. Every day I'd cry at home, stay at my house, cry for no reason. Everything started to crumble before my eyes, and the only name that came to my mind was my mother's, and I really didn't want to hear that. So at that point, I got in contact with her. Everything was I just saw darkness around me. I got even more angry, even more depressed. And the thing is that I imploded as opposed to exploding. I moved in essentially with my mom, but I hated it because her smell made me want to vomit. Her voice made me sick. At that point, she stopped inviting me to church. She knew, don't push. And there was a leaflet at that point on the table. So I saw the leaflet and that thing kept pushing me because I thought, you know what? I've seen changes in my family. I have seen changes, but is it real? I popped in, wore a hat, so I didn't want to speak to anyone. I just wanted to go in there, listen to their nonsense, and get out. When I went home, I thought, you know what? I'm going to see if you truly exist. I'm not happy. I hate you, God, whoever you are. So you need to make me like you. So it was like a battle of prayers. I started attending the church more. And eventually things started changing. the hardest thing was for me to apologize. The day that I did, I went in the room and I cried for like 2.5 hours. And I went out and I apologized. She apologized. And slowly it built up. Then I started doing more, realizing that God does truly exist. We just need to know that He cannot help us if we do not ask. My life has problems, but I have peace. No more grudge, oh my gosh, no more hate. Me and my mother will get on. I love her, I respect her now. I love my sisters, we hug, we talk. Obviously there's going to be disputes. But yeah, and things are getting better. I've got my own business, trying to establish it more. The best thing is just talking to people and trying to let them see that they can have the same thing that I have, and it's not forced, it's not a film, it's not Hollywood. It's hard, but once you do have it, the peace of knowing that God is there, He's just there anytime you need Him.
Welcome back. Well, I hope today's program didn't make you feel bad or guilty. We weren't here to say that you are the problem. No. Like we said before, the testimony. The great news is that if the problem is with you, if it's something you need to change, you already have what it takes to fix it. You have the tools. It's you that can do that work. Of course, by yourself you can't, and that's where faith comes in. So my advice to you is take the altar of the Universal Church of the Kingdom of God, the Succeeding Life Center, as a solution to all your problems. Go there to the altar, take your letter of shame, if it's in your relationship. Take the letter of divorce, take the screenshot of the messages between your husband and his lover, between your wife and her lover, or the messages of arguments between both of you. Take it to the altar, and there you can fix this problem. I hope people understand, Leonard, that we're not here pointing fingers. We're actually here delivering good news, that if they identify the problem, they can solve it.
And this is as simple as it sounds. Be courageous. Do what we advise you to do today. Be courageous and look inside yourself. It can be painful, but it will be... It will heal you. You will see how things will change from now on. Even with people around you, with friendships, with relationship, colleague relationship. When you look at yourself, things change around you. You can do it.
That's it. May God bless you. I want to encourage all of you to do two things after this program. Number one, share this program with someone who needs help in their relationship. And if you have any questions you want to send to us, please feel free to send us your questions. We'll answer them here in the program. God bless you. Bye-bye.
The strongest and most sinister power in the East, Assyria, devoured every nation that stood in its path. It treated its captives harshly by cutting off their arms and legs, ears, noses, and lips, and forced them to do hard labor. Enemy soldiers were frequently blinded, had their tongues torn out, their skin peeled off, or were impaled on sharp poles. Few nations had the courage to fight Assyria. Hezekiah, king of Judah, rebelled against Assyria by refusing to pay their high taxes. In response, King Sennacherib attacked Judah after destroying the northern kingdom of Israel. King Hezekiah tried to change his mind by sending him large amounts of gold and silver, but he was shown no mercy. Sennacherib attacked and took possession of many cities in Judah, and soon the only remaining city was Jerusalem. Carved on the ancient Sennacherib prison, discovered in 1920 by archaeologists in Mosul, Iraq, King Sennacherib tells us in his own words what he did. Because Hezekiah, king of Judah, would not submit to my yoke, I came up against him, and by force of arms and by the might of my power, I took 46 of his strong fenced cities. And Hezekiah the Judahite I shut up in Jerusalem, his royal city, like a caged bird. Before Sennacherib reached Jerusalem, Hezekiah had realized that the city's western hill was unprotected and vulnerable, and ordered a large wall to be built. Houses were torn down to make way for this wall and to provide building materials. Jerusalem's main source of water, the Gihon Spring, also needed to be protected. If this was not done, their enemies could block the spring and completely cut the city off from water. Hezekiah came up with a bold plan to build a 400-meter tunnel through solid rock to change the direction of the spring. Workers began to dig the tunnel under the foundations of the city and miraculously finished before Sennacherib arrived. Jerusalem's walls and water supply were safe. When the Assyrian army arrived in Jerusalem, Judah's complete destruction appeared to be certain. The army commander walked up to the wall of the city, met with Hezekiah's officials, and read a letter from Sennacherib in a loud voice so everyone could hear. He mocked and insulted both Hezekiah and his God. When the king heard this, he tore his clothes, went to the temple, and spread out the mocking letter before God, and cried out, saying, "Incline your ear, O Lord, and hear. Open your eyes, O Lord, and see, and hear the words of Sennacherib, which he has sent to mock the living God. So now, O Lord our God, save us, please, from his hand, that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you, O Lord, are God alone." That night the angel of the Lord was sent out, and in the morning mighty Sennacherib woke up to find that 185,000 of his soldiers had died during the night. And so he gave up his attack of Jerusalem and returned to Assyria. Not long afterward, Sennacherib was worshiping at the temple of his god, Nisroch, when two of his sons killed him with swords. And his son Esarhaddon replaced him as king. And so, what God said through the prophet Isaiah came true. The king of Assyria shall not come into this city, nor shoot an arrow there. By the way that he came, by the same he shall return. For I will defend this city, to save it for my own sake and for my servant David's sake.